So welcome again to Redacted Nuisance, that weird little 10 to 15 minutes on Tinternet that is done in one take, unedited, and then posted a couple of weeks later, where I may or may not remember entirely what I talked about and may skip to maybe 7 minutes in, listen for 10 seconds and go, well, that seems enough to write up a blurb, and then discover I talked about something completely different. So, two quick things. I'm Dr. J, use they as pronoun, non-binary, queer, been doing stuff here on Tinternet. I've created this space to have a space to rant. Now, I normally identify as a queer nuisance. The reason this isn't called Queer Nuisance, which would have been the obvious and one might say logical choice of a title, the reason it's called Redacted Nuisance is because we are parkouring ourselves around an obstacle in a very queer way. Queers know how to get themselves around things like administrative obstacles, problems with logins, problems with names, problems with identity and identity papers and all of those things. So one of the things that I've done is I understand enough about the algorithms on Tinternet, and I understand that calling this queer nuisance would mean A, it would not get played in many places, and B, there'd be some people who would want to listen to it, who would desire to listen to it, who would never be shown it because the word queer would be banned from their feed because of the geography that they're in or other restrictions that they've got, or they would not feel comfortable listening to something that was outrageously branded as queer. So that is why this has no rainbows on it. That is why this doesn't mention Pride or LGBTQ plus or anything like that. I try to keep the tags relatively bland. So if you find this and you're not expecting to hear a queer voice, hi, it's lovely to meet you. I'm Dr. J, I'm queer, I've been queer, well, I was been queer all my life. I have been able to be, oh, that's interesting, actually, to puzzle through. So, have I been queer all of my life? I believe so. I believe I've always been outside of that heteronormative, cis-normative, normative kind of grouping the entirety of my life. Have I been comfortable being out as queer for all of my life? No. In fact, the place where I grew up was not a space where it was comfortable to be of the LGBTQ, of the queerness. It was not a space where a difference was allowed, but there was only a certain amount of difference allowed. In fact, the very small amount of difference, I mean, people would, not to reveal too much, the church that I went to struggled to cope with somebody who didn't have sufficient faith and believed in evolution rather than creation. Now, I'm a scientist. I trained as a scientist. In fact, if you want to try and find me on Tinternet, and feel free, J is a very hard word to search. You'll probably find me though. The reason it's hard to search J is it's only one letter. Throws off a lot of searches. Yes, I have a degree in science. Have several degrees in science actually. I still consider myself a scientist because it forms the way that I think about the world. I interact with the world. I look at the world and go, hypothesis, could we do this? Wonder what happens if we do this? Did that work? And everyone talks about a failed experiment because my hypothesis was not proven. And I'm like, oh, no. A failed experiment. An experiment, you either get, yes, I proved my hypothesis, or no, my hypothesis needs some adjustment. Those are the outcomes of an experiment. Sometimes, my hypothesis be more goodly than I thought. Woohoo! I'm heading down the right path, even though I didn't think that was the right path. Or sometimes you get, why? What is wrong with my hypothesis? The only time an experiment fails is when a vial breaks in a centrifuge and you are faced with a radiation cleanup that basically takes away your day. True story. True story. Yes, I did used to work with radiation. I am somebody. Uh, don't even talk about the life expectancy of people who've done research. We work with such dangerous chemicals all the time, and we are safe with them, and we use them correctly, and we follow all the hazard rules and all the safe health and safety rules. And occasionally, you just have moments of going, "Yeah, that's a lot of acrylamide to have spilt on to have spilt in that split glove. I wonder how much nerve damage I've got in that hand now." Wow, that was a lot of radiation. I think I got it all. I'm pretty sure. We did a pretty good cleanup that day. Um, but I'm not entirely sure that over the years, I didn't ingest more radiation than I should have. Yeah, one of those things. So where was I going? Oh, yes, coming out as queer. So was I always queer? Yes. Was I identifiably queer? Yes, because people look at me and go, that kid, that person, that child, that young adult, that teenager, that person in their early 20s, that person in their 30s, even looking at me now, they go, "You're not quite in this cis-normative straight world, are you? You're not quite one of the mainstream. Yeah, there's something about you, no matter how you look, how you dress, there's something about you that just goes, there's something different there." And as a child, it would show up. I was bookish. I read a lot. I still do. I'm on holiday at the moment, and I have quite happily completed a book a day. Yes, they are trashy, but still, I will happily sit and read 1 to 2 books a day, no problems, as part of a holiday. I will probably end up reading about 7 to 10 books across the 7 days. Um, that wasn't that usual where I grew up. That wasn't that usual in my family. That definitely was not usual in my school. My church, no. Um, Everywhere that I was, that was an unusual to be that curious to read that much. My parents, I look back and go, oh my God, they tried so hard to understand what I was reading and kind of ensure it was age appropriate. Some of it wasn't, but that's entirely my fault. I would just pick up stuff and start reading it and blurt out stuff at the kitchen table. There's nothing like the 6-year-old confidently explaining where babies come from because they had picked up a book trying to figure out where chickens came from because they were curious about chickens. Because 3 days earlier, my dad had brought home boiler chickens from the chook farm. We would get the old layers, the old hens who had finished being laying, and he would get them. We would occasionally have to pluck them because getting them plucked cost a little bit more. We would sometimes be plucking the chicken. We would sometimes be cleaning the chicken. So I'd seen the inside of the chicken, and I understood that inside the chicken were eggs, and that was where eggs came from. So in the library, there was a book called Where Eggs Come From. So I picked it up and started reading it. I am 6. It also told me where babies came from in great and graphic detail. And so I confidently announced this at the dinner table. I think my poor mother and my poor father, both of them, just had no idea of what to do. It's like, what is this unholy child that we have? Not only are they reading everything, they are confidently re-expressing it and understanding it, probably at a level that's at a 6-year-old's level, but also at a very, very widely read 6-year-old's level. So there was lots of drama over that, including people worrying about whether or not this was from the school, it was from the public library, whether or not it had been in an age-appropriate section. Quite frankly, people in the library had given up trying to point me to the age-appropriate section because I'd read all of them books and had just kind of let me go at the entire kids section, not realising, of course, that the curious 6-year-old would pick up a book that was aimed at about a 10 or a 12-year-old. So yes, I was a queer child. I was a child who would question things. I was a child who didn't have any faith, but would also alternate between having zero faith in what I was told, and 100% faith in what I was told, because that was what I had to do to survive in that space. So have I always been queer? The answer is yes. Is it always obvious that I was queer? Oh my God, yes. Did that lead to... That led to a lot of questions. That led to a lot of... The kids always knew I was different. That I wasn't a girly girl, and I wasn't a boily boy, and I wasn't a girly boy, and I wasn't a boily girl. I didn't really play across that binary. I was considered a tomboy and sporty, but I was rubbish at sports. I am not a team player for sports. I would disassociate way too much. You put me in the field and you'd have no idea what I'd be thinking, or whether I'd be focusing on the game, or whether I'd even be thinking about the game. I could be thinking about where chickens and eggs come from. I could be thinking about evolution. I could be thinking about whether or not God does actually exist. These were thoughts that I would have standing in the middle of the field. And then a ball would come towards me and it'd be like, what am I supposed to do with this? Where am I going? What am I doing? Yeah, welcome to the wonderful world of queerness. So yes, I was queer as a child. As I started to try and understand sexuality, and that was very obvious I was queer. And I'm sapphically inclined. I do have a tendency more towards women, and women-identified people, and people of particular genitalia, although I do play with the other genitalia occasionally. It's a mystery. It's a mystery to me what my preferences are. At the moment, not really bothered about either of it. But at various times I've played with either, which also confuses people, because some people see me as exclusively sapphic and go, oh my God, you had an ex called Neil. And it's like, yes, I had an ex called Neil. So there is, have I always been queer? Yes. Have I always been able to be out as being queer? No. And therein lies a lot of why I have CPTSD. Just when you can't be who you are, when you can't express who you are safely, when you are constantly having to hide yourself for safety, to unpick the signals, and the signals are, I'm going to say, weak gravitational signals, showing what a nerdly scientist I am. But those weak gravitational signals that people are giving you as to what you should and shouldn't be. And yeah, there is no way of knowing what you should be and what you shouldn't be and who you are. You just know who you aren't. And what you aren't is what somebody wanted.